If you look at our utility networks, they are highly unresilient. Every time we have a storm, the poles come down, people lose their electricity, they use their telecoms. We have water pipes buried under the streets and elsewhere which are leaking left, right and centre. We have gas and broadband which don't even cover the entire country because it's all too expensive. And all these problems can be solved at a stroke if we would only build our roads with ducts under them and thread our utilities through those ducts. I really feel for Hounslow. I think it's a fantastic presentation from Hounslow. But the one area I come unglued is having to manage 8,000 street works per year. And if you went to the equivalent district in Paris, say, the number of street works that you would have to manage for utility companies would be zero. And the state of the streets in Paris is in a different league from the state of the streets in London in general, although I can see that Hounslow are much better than most of London. So utility networks is totally linked to the resilience of highways, and I'm just hoping that one day before I leave this planet, we will be able to get highways with ducts under them that accommodate our utilities.
I think it's a really interesting question, and I think one of the advantages we've got at CIHT is sometimes you can take a step back and just ask some of those questions, because actually what Satbir and Hounslow and other highway authorities are having to deal with is a set of circumstances that have arisen almost because the highway is a public place. And actually, if you strip away or look at the different uses of the highway as that public place, actually you'd come to the conclusion that the use of it for utilities without them contributing to the cost of that highway is perhaps wrong. So actually there is, I think, a very real issue of saying if we're going to fund highways in a different way, which Hounslow are doing, and that might not be the right model at all, but actually if we're moving forward into a scenario where we've got automated vehicles that may require segregation into one part of a public highway, actually why shouldn't another part of it be for utilities that actually pay that right fee for using that highway? And I think that's the way of moving it, and actually asking that question is a very important part of what we're about, I think, because it comes to the heart of a resilient network in two ways. It's a part of funding a resilient network, but also being resilient in the practical sense that you're not digging trenches all the time.
Thank you. Well, just move here first and I'll come back to
you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, speak right into
It's really an observation and also a question to David to do with bitumen supplies. A few years ago I sat in with a presentation from John Reid, who also reflected on the reduction in refining capacity and availability of bitumens for the future and so on. But I do agree with what you said, that we need to have a more informed view of what we're using and the types of bitumen. But we are facing a sea change, are we not, in terms of availability?
I think we may well be, hence making the point. I mean, the IMO regulation is a matter of fact, and that will have an impact. It's already having an impact on the transfer of heavy fuel oil from across the Atlantic, for example, into the UK. John Reid, for those of you who don't know him, works for Shell. Shell is a very, very responsible bitumen supplier, and they are technically right at the forefront. They launched a model for adding bits back into bitumen because that's one way of confessing that they've actually taken it out in the first place, and they're going to charge you a premium for what they used to give you as an all-inclusive product before. But fair play to them. If we can, and I believe it is inevitable, the point I'm trying to make is that if we're going to design for durability, we should demand that they put things in that are going to make it durable. And then we should understand that there is a premium to be paid for having that put back in there, but it should pay for itself more than because of the increased durability of the pavement that we've got. There's no doubt about it. We do face a great deal of change in the future.
Can I ask David, can you give us an idea about what sort of is the average percentage of recycled content sort of across the board? And are different councils requiring different percentages or allowing different percentages, but then on top of that, can I also ask, sort of, in your opinion, which is obviously expert, is a high wrap content road that's got a heavily polymer modified binder likely to last longer or perform better than a regular virgin road made with virgin materials without the polymer modified binder? And which would you say, in terms of value for money, is going to give the best bang for your buck for the customer?
Right, let's go back, Harry, because you clearly weren't listening to what I said. It depends on the provenance of your recycle in the first instance. If you don't understand your raw material, you can make roads with 10% recycled that will fail whether you put polymer modifier them in them or not.
Right.
I saw a device only yesterday from the United States, which is a machine which produces hot mix wrap with 100% recycled content in it with a polymer modified binder. And I won't go into the mechanics of the thing, but it's a very, very clever idea that they've got, and it's working remarkably well according to the American that was showing it to me. As regards the specification, a lot of authorities rely on the guidance given in the specification for highway works, for better or for worse, and that is a maximum of 50% in the lower layers of the road and a maximum of 10% in the upper layer of the road, which is why the trial that I referred to earlier that we did for TfL at 50% recycle was 5 times what people would consider to be wise. Now, we routinely, for off-highway work, make recycled materials with 60, 70, 80%. It depends on what you're trying to build. It depends on the quality of the wrap that you're putting into it. But the one thing you need to be aware of is that you need to design the material such that you accommodate the voids, the additional voids in the material, holes in it that you've got to fill with something. I would suggest you might be looking to fill those with more bitumen to give you a greater durability of that, but that then comes back to being dependent on the properties of the bitumen that you add. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I think the only other question, just sort of the last part, was, I suppose you sort of answered, is are the recycle mixes you're capable of making with these sort of sophisticated high-end polymer binders capable of demonstrating as good or better performance than the regular materials with the with regular virgin materials without the polymer binders?
Yes.
And what gives and would that give more value for money or less value for money for the customer?
Well, ultimately, it has to give more value to the customer, otherwise we won't recover the premium. My company also is the only company that imports bitumen to the United Kingdom in bulk. And we are also the only UK asphalt manufacturer which has its own polymer modification plant attached to its bitumen terminal. So we are looking at putting lower percentages of polymer into the lower layers of the road to increase the fatigue resistance, and those lower layers will contain recycled material of whatever proportion we design it to contain.
And are you adding any hydrated lime to sort of deal with the acidity issue?
No. Is the straightforward answer to that. We can talk about the benefits of hydrated lime, but if you're not going to have concrete roads, there could be a bit of cement lying around that you could throw in instead of hydrated lime, and it's a little cheaper.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, David talked about the design life, but in UK we have got contracts which last only 5 years or 7 years, and the design life of the material which is laid by the contractor is 10 years, 12 years, and we are not maximizing the benefit of that material because there is no penalty on the provider, the contractor, if it fails earlier. If the design life is 12 years and it fails within 7 years, we have released the defect liability within 1 year, we can't get hold of the contractor. So that is we should look into long-term contracts, transferring the risk to the provider, the contractor, so that they deliver the design life, the life cycle of the material.
I have a confession to make. I didn't read my script. I'd actually got a bit about contractor risk sharing in that. And yes, we should be able to warrant the life of the materials. There's no point in me telling you we should be designing materials if we're not going to give some predictability as to the risk associated with that. And there should be shared risk between the manufacturer, contractor, and the client, because yes, we do need to do this. And the whole value of the material in its recycled form should also be considered as part of the asset too.
I've got a question for Andrew, if I may. You talked about resilience at the start and the skills gap, which is well documented, and the need to get diversity. Do you think we're too late with the programme in this? Or do you think you're looking at Highways England and HS2's massive programmes that are starting to gather momentum? Is it too late to turn this oil tanker and get the numbers of people into the industry that we need?
If I follow David's examples, again, simple answers no. I don't think it is too late. Just a lesson from my sort of experience, and just as an individual, not CIHT sort of, and it was around the PFI thing. So PFI came about for a number of reasons, and it led, particularly in street lighting, to a series of schemes which actually gave certainty and continuity to a sector that previously had been starved of funding. And actually what you saw then was that sector, i.e. the electrical sector and the manufacturing sector, ramp up and starting to produce different products and employing people to drive those different products. Now, unfortunately, PFI got pulled away, in my opinion, but I think the whole LED side of things is an example of not just around skills, but of if you give certainty and continuity, then actually the resources, whether it's people or materials or whatever it is, will follow, because actually there's a rationale for the research and investment to do so. So actually that's why that's in every response to a government consultation. That is our mantra about certainty and continuity, because it is the only way. It doesn't matter whether it's been delivered through PFI or whatever. It's important that there's certain continuity. So you start to get younger people coming, apprentices coming in, different graduates coming in, picking up the sort of the manual of materials science that underpins everything. You get certain continuity. Yes, we can do it.
Thank you.
Just to add a point, you may not be aware, but the most recent Highways England contract actually has a requirement in there for the bidder to promote the employment of ex-servicemen. Now, in our particular sector, we welcome that, and we're very happy to do it. We do it anyway, because these are the very people who have experience of driving HGVs and a lot of the skills that we need in terms of plant, etc. I think that the consistency of workload is something that we have to tackle before we can make that commitment meaningfully. You know, we've got people, we're all aware of the mental health issues that some ex-servicemen and the impact that it has on their family and society, and the total cost of looking after those people who've served the country. I think you've got to give us a chance and give us a job that's more than 3 months long to actually get the best out of such a person and turn him into what he undoubtedly is, a very skilled and valuable member. And there are lots of other examples of that. Apprentices, again, there are massive schemes running through the construction industry, brilliant schemes about apprentices, and all the major contractors take part in that. It isn't just about apprentices. There's a whole wealth of people out there that we are not employing because we can't employ them, because the worst thing you can do to build somebody's self-esteem is to take him on and then tell him, I'm sorry, you were last in and you're first out, Sonny Jim, because we haven't got any work for the next 12 months.